Welcome. Today we're reading the chapter Whispers of Betrayal of the novel Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. Last time, Jim Blake's search for lion photographs turned into a life-altering ordeal when a storm struck, stunning him and leaving him lost in the forest. After narrowly escaping danger from a group of lions and discovering the remains of his gun-bearer, he wandered for days before stumbling upon a giant ancient cross that exuded an ominous feeling. As he continued along the trail, Blake encountered two armed men adorned with unusual attire, leading him into a tunnel filled with mystery and danger.
The snake strikes unversed in junglecraft, overwhelmed by the enormity of the catastrophe that had engulfed him, his reasoning faculties numbed by terror. Wilbur Stimball slunk through the jungle, the fleeing quarry of every terror that imagination could conjure. Matted filth caked the tattered remnants of his clothing that scarce covered the filth of his emaciated body. His once graying hair had turned to white, matching the white stubble of a 4 days' beard. He followed a broad and well-marked trail, along which men and horses, sheep and goats had passed within the week, and with the blindness and ignorance of the city dweller, he thought that he was on the spoor of Blake's safari. Thus it came that he stumbled, exhausted, into the menzil of the slow-moving Ibn Jad. Fejwan, the gullah slave, discovered him and took him at once to the sheikh's bait, where Ibn Jad with his brother Tolog and several others were squatting in the muqa'ad sipping coffee. "By Allah, what strange creature hast thou captured now, Fejwan?" demanded the sheikh. "Perhaps a holy man," replied the black, "for he is very poor and without weapons and very dirty. Yes, surely he must be a very holy man." "Who art thou?" demanded Ibn Jad. "I am lost and starving. Give me food," begged Stimball. But neither understood the language of the other. "Another Nasrani," said Fard contemptuously. "A Frenchie, perhaps." "He looks more like one of El Ingles," remarked Tolog. "Perhaps he is from France," suggested Ibn Jad. "Speak to him that vile tongue, Faht, which thou didst come by among the soldiers in Algeria." "Who are you, stranger?" demanded Faht in French. "I am an American," replied Stimball, relieved and delighted to have discovered a medium of communication with the Arabs. "I have been lost in the jungle and I am starving." "He is from the New World, and he has been lost and is starving," translated Faht. Ibn Jad directed that food be brought, and as the stranger ate they carried on a conversation through Faht. Stimball explained that his men had deserted him, and that he would pay well to be taken to the coast. The Bedouin had no desire to be further hampered by the presence of a weak old man and was inclined to have Stimball's throat slit as the easiest solution of the problem, but Fard, who was impressed by the man's boastings of his great wealth, saw the possibilities of a large reward or ransom, and prevailed upon the sheikh to permit Stimball to remain among them for a time at least, promising to take him into his own bait and be responsible for him. "Ibn Jad would have slain you, Nasrani," said Faht to Stimball later, "but Faht saved you. Remember that when the time comes for distributing the reward, and remember too, that Ibn Jad will be as ready to kill you tomorrow as he was today, and that always your life is in the hands of Faht. What is it worth?" "I will make you rich," replied Stimball. During the days that followed, Fahad and Stimball became much better acquainted, and with returning strength and a feeling of security, Stimball's old boastfulness returned. He succeeded in impressing the young Bedouin with his vast wealth and importance, and so lavish were his promises, that Fahad soon commenced to see before him a life of luxury, ease and power. But with growing cupidity and ambition, developed an increasing fear that someone might wrest his good fortune from him. Ibn Jad being the most logical and powerful competitor for the favors of the Nasrani, Fahd lost no opportunity to impress upon Stimball that the sheikh was still thirsting for his blood. Though, as a matter of fact, Ibn Jad was so little concerned over the affairs of Wilbur Stimball that he would have forgotten his presence entirely were he not occasionally reminded of it by seeing the man upon the march or about the camps. One thing, however, that Fahad accomplished was to acquaint Stimball with the fact that there was dissension and treachery in the ranks of the Bedouins, and this he determined to use to his own advantage should necessity demand. And ever, though slowly, the Arab drew closer to the fabled leopard city of Nimr, and as they marched, Zayd found opportunity to forward his suit for the hand of Atasia, the daughter of Sheikh Ibn Jad, while Tolog sought by insinuation to advance the claims of Fahad in the eyes of the sheikh. This he did always and only when Fahad might hear, as, in reality, his only wish was to impress upon the young traitor the depth of the latter's obligation to him. When Tolog should become sheikh, he would not care who won the hand of Atasia. But Fahad was not satisfied with the progress that was being made. Jealousy rode him to distraction until he could not look upon Zayd without thoughts of murder seizing his mind. At last they obsessed him. He schemed continually to rid himself and the world of his more successful rival. He spied upon him and upon Atasia, and at last a plan unfolded itself with opportunity treading upon its heels. Fahad had noticed that nightly, Zaid absented himself from the gatherings of the men in the muqad of the sheik's tent, and that when the simple household duties were performed, Atasia slipped out into the night. Fahad followed, and confirmed what was really too apparent to be dignified by the name of suspicion. Zaid and Atasia met. And then one night, Fahad was not at the meeting in the sheik's bait. Instead, he hid near the tent of Zaid, and when the latter had left to keep his tryst, Fahad crept in and seized the matchlock of his rival. It was already loaded, and he had but to prime it with powder. Stealthily he crept by back ways through the camp, to where Zaid awaited his light of love and sneaked up behind him. At a little distance, sitting in his muqad, with his friends beneath the light of paper lanterns, Ibn Judd the sheik was plainly visible to the two young men standing in the outer darkness. Atasia was still in the women's quarters. Fahad, standing behind Zaid, raised the ancient matchlock to his shoulder and aimed. Very carefully he aimed, but not at Zaid. No, for the cunning of Fahad was as the cunning of the fox. Had Zaid been murdered, naught could ever convince Atasia that Fahad was not the murderer. Fahad knew that, and he was equally sure that Atasia would have naught of the slayer of her lover. Beyond Zaid was Ibn Judd, but Fahad was not aiming at Ibn Judd either. At whom was he aiming? No one. Not yet was the time ripe to slay the sheik. First must they have their hands upon the treasure, the secret of which he alone was supposed to hold. Fahad aimed at one of the amadan of the sheik's tent. He aimed with great care, and then he pulled the trigger. The prop splintered and broke a foot above the level of Ibn Judd's head, and simultaneously Fahad threw down the musket and leaped upon the startled Zaid, at the same time crying loudly for help. Startled by the shot and the cries, men ran from all directions, and with them was the sheik. He found Zaid being held tightly from behind by Fahad. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Ibn Judd. "By Allah, Ibn Judd, he would have slain thee," cried Fahad. "I came upon him just in time, and as he fired I leaped upon his back, else he would have killed you." "He lies," cried Zaid. "The shot came from behind me. If any fired upon Ibn Judd, it was Fahad himself." Atasia, wide-eyed, ran to her lover. "Thou didst not do it, Zaid. Tell me that thou didst not do it." "As Allah is my God and Muhammad his prophet, I did not do it," swore Zaid. "I would not have thought it of him," said Ibn Judd. Cunning, Fahad did not mention the matchlock. Shrewdly he guessed that its evidence would be more potent if discovered by another than he, and that it would be discovered he was sure. Nor was he wrong. Tolog found it. "Here," he exclaimed, "is the weapon." "Let us examine it beneath the light," said Ibn Judd. "It should dispel our doubts more surely than any lying tongue." As the party moved in the direction of the sheik's bait, Zaid experienced the relief of one reprieved from death, for he knew that the testimony of the matchlock would exonerate him. It could not be his. He pressed the hand of Atasia, walking at his side. Beneath the light of the paper lanterns in the muqad, Ibn Judd held the weapon beneath his gaze as, with craning necks, the others pressed about him. A single glance sufficed. With stern visage the sheik raised his eyes. "It is Zaid's," he said. Atasia gasped and drew away from her lover. "I did not do it. It is some trick," cried Zaid. "Take him away," commanded Ibn Judd. "See that he is tightly bound." Atasia rushed to her father and fell upon her knees. "Do not slay him," she cried. "It could not have been he. I know it was not he." "Silence, girl," commanded the sheik sternly. "Go to thy quarters and remain there." They took Zaid to his own bait and bound him securely. And in the muqad of the sheik the elders sat in judgment, while from behind the curtains of the women's quarters Atasia listened. "At dawn then he shall be shot." This was the sentence that Atasia heard passed upon her lover. Behind his greasy thorib Fahad smiled a crooked smile. In his black house of hair Zaid struggled with the bonds that held him, for though he had not heard the sentence, he was aware of what his fate would be. In the quarters of the harem of the Sheikh Ibn Judd, the Sheikh's daughter lay sleepless and suffering. Her long lashes were wet with tears, but her grief was silent. Wide-eyed she waited, listening, and presently her patience was rewarded by the sounds of the deep, regular breathing of Ibn Judd and his wife, Hirfa. They slept. Atasia stirred. Stealthily she raised the lower edge of the tent cloth beside which lay her sleeping mat, and rolled quietly beneath it into the muqad, now deserted. Groping, she found the matchlock of Zaid, where Ibn Judd had left it. She carried also a bundle wrapped in an old thorib, the contents of which she had gathered earlier in the evening when Hirfa, occupied with her duties, had been temporarily absent from the women's quarters. Atasia emerged from the tent of her father and crept cautiously along the single, irregular street formed by the pitched tents of the Arab until she came to the bait of Zaid. For a moment she paused at the opening, listening, then she entered softly on sandaled feet. But Zaid, sleepless, struggling with his bonds, heard her. "Who comes?" he demanded. "Sish!" cautioned the girl. "It is I, Atasia." She crept to his side. "Beloved," he murmured. Deftly the girl cut the bonds that held his wrists and ankles. "I have brought thee food and thy musket," she told him. "These and freedom I give thee. The rest thou must do thyself. Thy mare stands tethered with the others. Far is the Biled El Guad. Beset with dangers is the way. But night and day will Atasia pray to Allah to guide thee safely. Haste, my loved one." Zaid pressed her tightly to his breast, kissed her, and was gone into the night.
Did you enjoy today's chapter of Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle? Why not subscribe and ring the bell?